On the windswept deck off the coast of western France, a fallen emperor faces his final days. Napoleon Bonaparte, once the unstoppable force who reshaped Europe, now finds himself a prisoner of fate. Defeated at Waterloo, his dream of escaping to the United States shattered, he surrenders to the relentless Royal Navy. His exile to the remote island of Saint Helena is not just a banishment, it's the end of an era. But while Napoleon drifts beyond the horizon, his legacy refuses to fade. The echoes of his empire ripple through France's soul, igniting passions and divisions that will last for decades. Three monarchs rise, each trying and failing to bridge the impossible gap between the old world of kings and the revolutionary storm Napoleon unleashed. This is a story of power, pride, and the battle to define a nation's identity. It's the aftermath of a legend, a kingdom struggling to find its place between monarchy and revolution. Napoleon may be gone, but his shadow still looms large, shaping France's destiny in ways no king could control. After Napoleon's fall, France stood at a crossroads. Three Bourbon kings, Louis XVIII, Charles X, and Louis Philippe, each took the throne with one impossible mission: to reconcile the deep scars of revolution and empire with the ancient crown they wore. But their efforts would end in failure. Louis XVIII tried to walk a tightrope, embracing some revolutionary ideals while clinging to royal power. He issued his own constitution, promising freedoms, but made it clear the crown still ruled supreme. His reign was a fragile peace, with old royalists craving a return to the past and others yearning for liberty. Charles X took a darker path, pushing reactionary policies and tightening his grip. His reverence for the old regime and the church sparked outrage, alienating liberals and igniting unrest. His heavy-handed rule ignited the spark that would fuel the 1830 revolution. Finally, Louis Philippe, the so-called citizen king, rose promising unity and progress. But even he couldn't bridge the bitter divide. The ghosts of revolution and empire haunted every decision, and growing unrest brewed beneath his rule. Three kings, one crown, and a nation torn between tradition and change. Their story is a testament to the impossible task of rewriting history while trying to hold on to power. Louis XVIII ascended the throne in a France shattered by war and revolution. As a constitutional monarch, he faced an impossible balancing act, honoring the past while navigating a new world forever changed by Napoleon's rule and the revolution's ideals. Determined to maintain royal authority, Louis issued his own charter, promising freedoms like religious tolerance and a free press. But it was clear who held the real power. The charter was a royal gift, not a people's right. He kept many Napoleonic officials and judges, recognizing their skill, proving he was pragmatic and not blindly loyal to the old order. Yet, Louis XVIII's reign was marked by tension. Ultra-royalist conservatives in his government pushed to erase revolutionary gains, banning divorce, outlawing the tricolor flag, and censoring dissent. These hardliners clashed with moderates and liberals who still revered Napoleon's legacy. Though he sought a middle path, Louis could never fully heal France's deep divisions. His reign was a fragile peace, a nation caught between reactionary forces longing for the old monarchy and a restless public inspired by revolution and empire. Louis XVIII's legacy is a reminder. Ruling a nation shaped by upheaval demands more than power. It demands compromise, and sometimes that proves impossible. Beneath the fragile peace of Louis XVIII's reign, a fierce battle for France's soul raged on. The ultra-royalists, hardline conservatives yearning for a return to the old monarchy, rose like a storm. They sought to erase the revolution and Napoleon's legacy from the nation's memory. These reactionaries repealed revolutionary laws, banned the tricolor flag, and crushed symbols of change. To them, the past was a sacred monarchy, and anything else was treason. The church regained power, preaching royalist tradition and condemning revolutionary ideals. But the people of France were divided. While some embraced the royalists' vision, many still held tight to the revolutionary values of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Napoleon's image became a symbol of freedom, courage, and the common man's struggle. The ultra-royalists' relentless crackdown fueled deep resentment. Secret societies formed, rebellions sparked, and violence erupted between royalist mobs and supporters of the revolution and empire. The nation teetered on the brink as old rivalries boiled over into bloodshed. In this turbulent clash, France faced a stark choice: cling to the past or forge a new future. The ultra-royalists would push hard, but the spirit of revolution refused to be silenced. The Bourbon Restoration was more than just a return to power. It was a crusade to erase the revolution's scars. Under Louis XVIII and his successors, the monarchy launched a relentless campaign to suppress any trace of Napoleonic and revolutionary spirit. Freedom of speech became a battlefield. Strict censorship laws silenced newspapers, banned revolutionary symbols, and criminalized support for Napoleon. Even talking about altering the royal succession was deemed treason. The government sought to control minds as much as borders. A national day of mourning marked the execution of Louis XVI, a grim reminder of the monarchy's trauma and a symbol of royal vengeance. The Church, an unwavering ally, pushed royalist values through schools and society, suppressing Enlightenment ideas and revolutionary thought. But repression only fueled resistance. Secret societies and underground movements grew bolder, keeping the flame of liberty alive. The people's yearning for freedom and justice clashed with the monarchy's iron grip. The Bourbon regime's heavy hand created a nation divided, a society trapped between fear and hope. Their efforts to rewrite history only proved one truth: the revolutionary spirit, once ignited, could never be fully extinguished. Charles X's reign marked the darkest turn in the Bourbon Restoration. Unlike his cautious brother, Louis XVIII, Charles embraced a reactionary vision, determined to roll back the clock and restore the old monarchy's full power. His reign was a powder keg, ready to explode. He tightened suffrage, restricting voting rights to ultra-royalists, and lavished compensation on émigrés, those nobles who fled during the Revolution, igniting fury among the French bourgeoisie. But it was his alliance with the Church that sparked the greatest outrage. Under Charles, Catholicism regained control of education, and blasphemy laws grew harsher, with sacrilege even punishable by death. These repressive policies tore at the fragile fabric of French society. Liberals and moderates feared the return of absolutism and the erasure of revolutionary gains. Tensions mounted as Charles ignored warnings, viewing opposition as a threat to royal authority. In 1830, his harsh ordinances, suspending the press, limiting the vote, and dissolving the legislature, ignited the July Revolution. 3 days of fierce uprising forced Charles to abdicate, ending Bourbon rule and igniting a new chapter in France's turbulent history. Charles X's fall was a powerful reminder. The old ways could no longer contain the spirit of revolution. Rising from the ashes of revolution, Louis-Philippe took the throne as the citizen king, promising to unite a fractured France. He portrayed himself as a monarch of the people, blending the legacy of the ancient regime with the revolutionary ideals that reshaped the nation. At first, hope blossomed. The Palace of Versailles became a museum, celebrating both monarchy and revolution, and Napoleon's ashes were returned to France as a symbol of national pride. Louis-Philippe sought to create a shared history that inspired unity rather than division. But beneath the surface, old tensions simmered. The franchise remained limited to the wealthy elite, leaving many workers and the petite bourgeoisie voiceless. Social unrest grew as inequality persisted and calls for broader rights intensified. Despite his attempts at compromise, Louis-Philippe struggled to reconcile competing forces. The ghosts of revolution and empire haunted his reign, fueling opposition from Republicans, liberals, and radicals alike. Ultimately, the citizen king could not contain the rising tide. By 1848, frustration exploded into revolution once again, toppling his monarchy and paving the way for the Second Republic and the return of a new Napoleon. Louis-Philippe's reign was a fragile bridge between past and future, destined to collapse beneath the weight of France's restless spirit. Even as Louis-Philippe claimed the throne, Napoleon's shadow loomed large over France. The former emperor's legacy was more than history. It was a living symbol of patriotism, power, and the relentless fight for freedom. For many, Napoleon represented the very soul of France, a hero who rose from the common man to emperor, embodying glory, courage, and national pride. His memory inspired not just nostalgia, but fierce resistance against any ruler seen as weak or out of touch. Beneath the surface of Louis Philippe's cautious rule, Republican and radical movements grew stronger. Workers, peasants, and the rising middle class demanded expanded rights, social justice, and a voice in government. Napoleon's name became a rallying cry, uniting diverse groups who longed for a France that embraced liberty and power. His legacy fueled the revolutionary fires that would soon engulf the nation once again. As tensions mounted, it became clear the Bonapartist spirit could never be fully silenced. The question was no longer if, but when, a new chapter would open, one led by the enduring symbol of Napoleon himself. France in the 1830s and 1840s was a nation simmering with unrest. The bitter divide between royalists and liberals, between tradition and revolution, erupted into violence and rebellion. Secret societies thrived in the shadows, plotting change. Armed uprisings erupted in towns like Groby and Lyon, and even high-profile assassination attempts shocked the nation. Royalist mobs hunted down those loyal to Napoleon and the revolution, Republicans, Bonapartists, Protestants, all persecuted in brutal purges. Meanwhile, liberals fought desperately to avoid the extremes of absolutism or chaos, but were met with suspicion and crackdowns. Foreign conflicts like the invasion of Spain further polarized French society. Many liberals stood in solidarity with Spanish liberals, urging French soldiers to resist their own government's orders. But the monarchy's grip weakened. The rise of ultra-royalists pushed harsh policies that deepened fractures. Tensions exploded with the assassination of the Duc de Berry in 1820, triggering a wave of repression. The stage was set for a reckoning. Social, economic, and political pressures mounted until they could no longer be contained. The long-simmering conflict between monarchy and revolution was about to boil over and change France forever. The Revolution of 1848 was more than a political upheaval. It was the explosive climax of decades of unrest, hope, and fractured legacies. The people of France, especially the urban poor and the petite bourgeoisie, demanded justice, equality, and a voice in their future. The July monarchy of Louis Philippe crumbled under the weight of social inequality and unfulfilled promises. Streets filled with protesters fueled by the spirit of 1789 and the enduring legend of Napoleon. The cries for liberty, fraternity, and equality rang louder than ever. Amid the chaos, a new figure rose from the shadows, a Bonapartist heir ready to reclaim the glory of the empire. With a landslide victory, he captured the hearts of a nation longing for strength, order, and pride. The Second Republic was born, but so too was the promise of a new Napoleonic era, one that would again shape the destiny of France and the world. The fall of one empire gave way to the rise of another, proving that in France, history is never truly over. The legend of Napoleon endures, forever entwined with the struggle for power and identity. Napoleon's rise and fall was a tale of brilliance and hubris, of victories that shook empires, and a final defeat that reshaped the world. From the thunder of Austerlitz to the rain-soaked mud of Waterloo, he carved his name into history with both genius and ambition. Yet, in the end, even the greatest commander could not outmarch time, fate, and the will of united nations. Exiled to the lonely rock of Saint Helena, he became a legend in chains, his shadow still looming over Europe. His empire was gone, but the myth of Napoleon would never truly die.